let's give the wisdom the floor first, right? The aged wisdom, the same.
I take that. Okay, can you see all the wisdom? Okay, my journey started in 22. Um, Joe started having a rash on his arm, all over his body, but it was under his skin, and we couldn't figure out what it was. He went to the doctor, and the doctor, he came back and he didn't have any medicine for it. I said, "Well, what's going on?" He said, "Well, I'll be getting a call, a referral to a doctor." Well, the referral I got was for a neurologist. I'm like, why is he sending you to a neurologist? So we went to the neurologist where he had told, I found that the neurologist was examining Joe. My husband's name is Joe. So, and my husband kept saying, "But what about my rash?" He was doing all this stuff about his mind and said, "Well, what about my rash?" And the doctor said, "You're not here for your rash. You're here because you said you had some problem with your memory." He didn't tell me, he had told his doctor that. So, but I had looked it up and then say, why would a doctor send a patient with rash to a neurologist? And the only thing that came up, if they had problems with the liver. Turns out that was the diagnosis. He had cancer on his liver, on the small part of his liver. But during that process, my husband had a knee replacement surgery 12 years before that. And his other knee was acting up, and he was not able to work doing security. He did security, and he had to go up all these stairs over at one of the schools. So we went to the ortho, and they first thing they said, they gave him a date, September the 20th, but do your surgery, but you need to go get some blood work. Where the blood work came up, something's high, something's low. So then we had to go see the nurse practitioner, and he said that we're gonna, I think it said it's aorta test that they were gonna do to check the inside, and it came up showing that he had a large mass on his liver. It appeared to be a large mass on his liver. So then they had to have a scan. So we had to scan it, but it confined it to the small portion of his liver. And but during this time, everybody was going back to, they all just started in March. Everybody was going back to the doctor after COVID. So sometimes you couldn't get an appointment for about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, sometimes even longer. So it wasn't until September when he got diagnosed, September the 7th, diagnosed with liver cell cancer. And by this time, it was stage 3. And he would have been a good candidate for surgery, but he wasn't because during the time from March up until this time, he had lost so much weight. Every time we went to an appointment, it was 5 pounds, 7 pounds, 5 pounds. It was constantly going down. And his calcium stayed up a lot. So every time we went to UNC, he had to do what they call an infusion to build that, try to get that down. And sometimes his blood was low or had a urinary tract infection. And then they said that chemo, he couldn't have the surgery. Chemo wouldn't do anything to it because the mass was so large. So, and then the only other thing that they offered was immunotherapy that goes all over your body, kills all the cancer cells. And they would do that once a month for 3 months. And then the radiation. Just said no, because even just the infusion would kind of break his body down for a couple of days. So my job was to support him with whatever decision that he wanted to make. And at that time, he was choosing quality life over being sick. You never know how it's gonna. I mean, he was 70 years old. To me, back my mind, I said, I'll be fighting this thing, but I know this is what he wants to do, so I'm supporting him. And I believe that with or without treatments, God can heal you if you choose to. So that is what I stood on, knowing that it's in God's hands. I just need to continue to be the loving wife that I am, continue to support him and do what I can. And it was a journey that I didn't take alone. Church members took it with me, family members took it with me, because there were things that I had to do in the process, knowing that if he does pass, I got to get things in order. I need to go ahead and find a plot. CC helped guide me because she's in the funeral type business, and I had to go get the monument. And what I would do when I left to go do those things or go handle stuff at the funeral home, church members, different ones would come and sit with Joe. So he wouldn't be here by himself, because it got to the point that sometimes he will fall. And sometimes he couldn't help himself get up. And sometimes I wasn't enough to get him up. And so I'm so blessed to have my son 2 minutes away from me. I remember football season had just started. And I had to call him that day. I said, I need you to come. I know you're in the football game, but I need you to come help me get Joe up. And he was able to do it. And we blended our families. So I ended up with another son as well. Joe had a son. They were the same age. They knew each other before we even met through another mutual friend. His son was in Sierra as well. My daughter, everybody did their part of whatever we needed to do. We were married 23 and a half years. So, something like that just kind of pops in. I had just retired. April the 1st. But I just thank God that he was able to be there at my celebration. And it was on my birthday, March the 25th. So I just had to work one more week after that. So he was there. And he even came up to say a few words. And he was kind of feeble then. But it was hard to see this man of stature. He always had some weight on him, and then just see him just kind of go down like that. But it was still my honey in there. That was my pet name. I never called him Joe. It was Honey. So I don't think we know that death is something you cannot prepare for, but you have to accept the healing. I believe that even death, there's healing. There's no more sickness. There's no more just barely walking. There's no more, you're just at peace. So while I'm preparing myself, that I just had to accept it. I know. And then Brother Dublin, he knew the right questions to ask. You want to know what was I thinking, or where was I at when it came to if he did pass. But I shared with him that I know everybody has appointed time to leave, just like to be born. So I have to learn to accept that I don't know when it is. And then when it did happen, he really only really suffered was the day before, when he got to the point where he couldn't even eat mashed potatoes or get up out of the recliner chair to get on a transport chair. They had just came the day before. I just ordered it. And because when hospice started coming to see him, he was always sitting in this recliner, always, until that week, to that Thursday when they came. I said, the social worker came and the nurse came. I said, you're going to have to visit him in the bed today. So that's what they did. And then Saturday, I said, well, order a transport chair, because he had problems even walking with the walker. So they did that, and it came right on time. And I had cousins that had came up that day, and he had a couple cousins that came up as well. So they were there when I needed them to help him get into bed, So when it happened, I woke up Sunday morning. And even through the nights when he was just sleeping, I would always check to see if he's still breathing if I wake up through the night. And I had done it before that morning, and he was still breathing. But when I wake up and he was facing me, and his arms were in a different position, and it's like something different about this, and it just felt cold. It was cold, but he was transitioning. I didn't realize until later he was actually just transitioning. He hadn't got all the way there because we checked his. My son had a Fitbit watch, and he had a little pulse. And then his body's got warm after I had put the sheet of cover over him. And it's like, wait a minute, why is this man warm? But he was still transitioning. And a friend
Wow.
of mine said to just tell him that you love him and it's okay to go. So
Wow.
that's what I did. Yeah. I just thank God for the family on both sides. It's been very supportive.